What's up everybody, it's Parker with BI Elite. I have an awesome video today showing you how to set up some subtle tricks in order to help your users find their data faster. We can see what I mean by looking at this bar chart here on the right side. This current user deals mostly with the state of Georgia, so they want to be able to find Georgia data faster. And what we've done in this bar chart is we've colored Georgia gold, and we've also floated Georgia to the top of our bar chart. We can set this up so that other users who have other default states will have that default coloring and that default sort order. This saves the user time from having to find that state in this bar chart and then clicking on it. They can easily see their yellow bar, click on it, and filter down the rest of the report. So let's go ahead and dive into Power BI Desktop and I'll show you how I set this up. Here we are in Power BI Desktop. There's only a few steps in order to set this up completely. So in order to get started, let's go ahead and go to enter data. We're going to need a table that maps our users to a default state. So maybe you have this in your data source. I'm just going to go ahead and create a table on the fly. So I'm going to call this user state mapping. And I want one column that is username and a second column that is state. So my username that I log into Power BI with is parker@bielite.com. And let's say my default state is Colorado, whereas Ola@bielite.com, her default state should be New York. We can add as many usernames here as we want with their default states, but let's just stick to 2 right now. I'll go ahead and load that table in. And now we just need to create 2 measures, one for the coloring and one for the sorting. So I'm going to go ahead and set up the coloring first. So I am going to create a new measure here, and I am going to call this user state color. And firstly, I just need to grab the user's default state based on the user that is currently viewing this report. So I can do that with a variable, and I'm going to call this current user state. And that is going to be a simple calculate just to give me one value from that user state mapping table state column. I specifically need to filter down that user state mapping table to where my username column equals the username function within DAX. So this username function is going to tell us which user is actually viewing the report, whether it's parker@bielite.com or ola@bielite.com. And then we're just grabbing the state associated with that username. Once we have that state, we can simply return an if statement. And since I created this bar chart here on the right, I know that my states that are populating the y-axis come from a table called state dim, and that column is called state, so it's state dim state. So I can say if selected value of my state dim state column equals my current user state variable, then I want to return a specific color. And in order to highlight this properly, I'm going to create a yellow color. So firstly, I'm just going to Google for the color yellow. And let's go ahead and skip the cold play, go to the images. I'm just going to use this one right here. So I have a nice color picker, which is going to give me that exact color, and save it to my clipboard. So I'm going to throw this in the form of a string, that color right there. So if our current state in our visual equals the default user state, we want to color it that yellow. Else, let's return blank. And that's the entire color measure. So now, once we click on this bar chart and go to the formatting options under data colors, we can go to this function icon for the default coloring to open up the conditional formatting for those bar colors. And instead of formatting by color scale, let's format by field value. And then let's search for that color measure we just created, user state color, and click OK. So that's not going to show anything in Power BI Desktop because my current username right now is actually my computer name. The email form of that username is only going to show on Power BI Service. So we won't see anything in Desktop right now. Well, let's go ahead and publish this up and take a look at what we've done. So I'll go ahead and publish this up to my YouTube workspace and give that just a few seconds. Looks like we're all good. Let's go over to Power BI Service, and I'm going to go back to my YouTube workspace. And the new one we published was called Dynamic Default User View Demo. So I'll open that up, and we will see that as my username, Parker@bielite, was linked to Colorado, Colorado is now yellow. So it doesn't take too much searching to find that yellow bar, but we might want to float this to the top as well, just so I don't have to scroll and see my current state. So I'm going to put this on top and then everything else behind it. So let's go ahead and do that with a very similar measure. So back in Power BI Desktop, I'm going to copy this code for the user state color. So I'm going to copy that. Let's create one more measure. And I'm going to call this user state sort order. So everything's going to be the exact same, but instead of returning this color, I'm going to return a very large value, a value larger than anything that our measure in this visual will hold. So that's something along the lines of like 100 trillion. Else we want to return just the measure that's in this visual. So that is total confirmed cases of the coronavirus. So running back through this, because we went through that quickly, if the state in the visual is the current user state, I want a very large value. Else we just want to return the actual value for that state. This is going to create that sort order. Once we click enter, we can close this down, and we actually need to throw in our new measure, which was called user state sort order. We need to throw that in the tooltips so that it is used inside this visual. And once we click these three dots, let's sort by our user state sort order and make sure it is descending because we set a very large value for the current user state. Again, we don't see anything in Power BI Desktop, but once we save and publish this, so I'll go ahead and publish this and meet you over in Power BI Service once it's done. So now I'll refresh my page to get the latest version of this report, and we should see that my Colorado should have floated to the top here, and there it is. So Colorado, even though it's a very small bar, it should be lower down on the list. It is showing as that first spot, and it can allow me just to easily filter that down just to see my default view. Just as a quick test, I'm going to view this as Ola and see if she's seeing her current state as New York. And here we are in Ola's view. We do see that New York is highlighted and it floats to the top of this bar chart. These were just a few tricks in order to tailor the report to the current user, so it's not so hard for them to find the data that really matters to them. If you like this video, make sure you check out my training at training.bielite.com. We have some great content around Power BI, DAX, and Alteryx. The link is down in the description. And with that, I'll see you in the next video.